Hi, my name is John King and I'm the lead mechanic for the Arise Racing GT team. My passion for cars started up in high school. I knew nothing about cars prior to that. It didn't interest me. My personal interests at the time were basketball and video games. Fast and Furious had come out and that was a big hit with all my friends. It was the talk about in class. That's how, we got nothing done during that time. Finally got myself a copy to watch and I was hooked. Eventually learnt my way around, learning cars, playing Gran Turismo. Seeing the Japanese car scene, if anything, I had a big love for the Japanese drift scene. It wasn't until my later years that eventually exotic cars such as Ferrari and Lamborghini got into my life, and then eventually that kind of took over. Let's go back to year 12, TE. My results were, let's say, nothing fantastic. The initial idea as a child was to be an architect. That never actually looked like it was going to happen. So immediately getting home, telling my mum that, that was a shocking result. And I'd already, developing through high school a love for cars, I pretty much accepted and said to my mum, look, let's go to TAFE and sign me up for a mechanics course. 6 months went by, doing pretty well. Our teacher at the time would kind of assess the sort of people we were, and he would try fit us into where he thought we would fit best. I remember being a little bit daydreaming at the time because someone was talking to me, and the name in the background was John, and he said Jaguar, and that was the Barbagallo Jaguar at the time, and I was like, oh, sorry, and he said, would you like to work on Jaguars? And I was like, well, aren't they that luxury British car brand? And he said, well, yeah, do you want to work on it? I said, sure. Obviously went to go check it out and saw, I'd started my apprenticeship with the Barbagallo group at the Jaguar, Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin workshop. Let's say my first 2 years as an apprentice was in this building. I was a hard worker, could be a bit of a smart ass at times, but eventually there was an opportunity. My boss had come up to me and just said, look, the Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati workshop is starting to grow, and we need an apprentice. Would you be interested? At the time I kept a calm, sure, yes. Where inside I was kind of giggling for joy because, at the time I didn't really care about Ferrari. But I knew, during their F1 days with Michael Schumacher, I knew it was a special brand. If anything, my favorite brand at the time would have been McLaren. My foreman at the time pretty much had just gotten back from a training trip in Italy, and he had gotten a little Ferrari book. And probably the first thing he said to me was, here, take that home with you and get yourself acquainted with the brand. And that's how we got there. My time at Barbagallo Ferrari, I got to work on many amazing models. I got to work on the LaFerrari. That was, and not just a little simple check over, that was for a recall on the fuel tanks. So essentially we had to pull the car in half, in two pieces, my magic trick I would call it, and replace the fuel tank due to something to do with a corrosion. I remember the owner of the car was a little bit reluctant for me to do the job because he felt that if we were to pull the car in two pieces, that the car would never be the same again. I ensured the client and my boss, Alf Barbagallo at the time, that I will make that car exactly how it was. That was probably one of my most obsessive jobs in terms of photo capturing everything, from even to the point of cable ties. Pretty much anything I removed, I made sure it went back exactly as it was. Even if it was like a wiring clamp at an angle like that, I made note of that, and where the cable tie was exactly. And that was a torquing spree as well. Every bolt was specifically torqued to spec. My approach was to build that car as if it was built from factory. They'll give you 30 hours warranty. Ferrari would pay us to do the job. From memory, I remember my boss being a little bit edgy at me for taking 80 hours to do the job. So that was definitely one up there. Another favorite of mine was the F40. I got to work on a few, lucky to say. Each one was kind of like a major service. It was every fluid done, timing belt. I would readjust the cam shims. The fuel tanks had to be replaced as well because they were like a fuel cell. I haven't actually I happened to do a clutch on an F40 as well with my foreman. That was a pretty cool experience as well. Ferrari Enzo, that was definitely got to do some pretty cool work on that. Mainly major servicing, but it was a lot of kind of restoration work. The UK weather got onto it pretty hard underneath, so we worked hard to getting some pieces off and getting all that stuff restored, so that was pretty fun. As well as that, there is the 812 comp behind me as well. That was a pretty cool car to work on, mainly because, let's just say, the client likes to add his little touch to it, and I had fun making it look the part, so it may look a little bit lower than factory. Oh look, another favourite job of mine would be the Ferrari 355. Doing major services, and those were very fun because you get to tear out the rear end. So it was like, you'd have the car and hoist, undo the rear subframe, and then you'd have this kind of cage come down with the engine inside, and you could rebuild it on the spot. Every time I had a 355 come in for a major service, that was a really enjoyable job to do. Anything gearbox related during the F1 gearbox series, so you would have like, the 360, F430, and then especially their 430 Scud, probably the best gearbox I've ever had a chance to drive on. 599 GDO was the same as well. The shifts on it were very raw and natural. So the Testarossa Challenge is a yearly event. Previous mechanics might know as the Ferrari Tech Challenge. One big tick off my list was to be able to qualify for the yearly Tech Challenge. It would essentially start off as a 200 questions, online questions. So you would just imagine me back home in Australia. I'd log into my domain for Ferrari and then go into my training thing, and then there'd be the yearly challenge. You'd pretty much essentially get, it's almost like 200 questions worth of just multiple choice questions of just testing your knowledge with Ferrari. And it was kind of based on obviously getting questions right, but also have a time factor to it as well. So, you couldn't just simply sit on it. You only had 2 minutes per question, so you had to be kind of a little bit hasty. I qualified for that in 2019, 2021, and 2022. Most memorable we'll go with is 2019. Qualified for the semi-finals. There was 12 regions that Ferrari had. We were the Australasia region, which was pretty much Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Asia. We were flown to Italy and Maranello. Gave us a real-life situation. 2 cars with 2 problems. We had 20 minutes each to solve each one. They never tell you who got it right or who got it wrong, but basically they would pick who was worthy to make the finals. And luckily enough, that was me. Essentially, I had to go to Italy again. Landed, got picked up in a fancy van. We didn't have time to actually check in at the moment, so we had to go straight to Verano Circuit, which was like an hour out from, you could say, from Maranello. They would start off with like kind of a driving course. We had at the time, that was when I had a chance to drive there. That was the Ferrari F8 had just come out. So we got to drive the Ferrari F8 around Verano. And then later on, they were kind of doing a bit of a competition thing, not based on lap time. The pro drivers that were teaching us would go set out a lap, and then you would look at their data, and the idea was to give out a lap as close as possible in a pro's approach. And I was able to match that pretty well and won that little bit. So that was a nice little start to my 2019 challenge. It's a 2-day thing. Day 1 was a day to forget. I think I did pretty poor in both written and practical. It just was in a different mindset. I think I got my nerves got the best of me. So it kind of caught me off guard. So that was quite a funny night. Later that night, we got to have a dinner party, got to meet some amazing people, because you get to see people from all around the world, and then you, at the same time, get to meet some amazing people within the Ferrari factory, some big names as well. Due to a bad day, a fair few too many drinks. There were many that loved me, and there were a few that thought I was being a little bit of a fool, but a very hungover day for the next day, for day 2. I wasn't expecting much by then. I thought day 1 was a write-off, and day 2 coming in hungover, very, very bad. My first test was a written on suspension. At the time, I remember, barely being awake, being able to do it. Obviously that test was done, over and done with. We walked off onto my next one, which was a practical. I remember one of my trainers all our trainers were there. One of them pulled me aside and was like, "John, what the fuck is wrong with you?" I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, do you know that you got the highest score in that written test right there? Did I? I said, he goes, yeah, you got the highest score. I said, which one was that? He goes, you just did it. I said, yeah, what topic? He goes, suspension. I was like, oh, I can't remember. He goes, you scored higher than anyone. He goes, maybe you being hungover is a good thing. And let's just say day 2 was actually a pretty good one. Let's say I wasn't going to win it, but from what I gathered, it put me back in the fight. From what I heard from internally, I kind of narrowly missed out on podium. It was a fantastic experience because at the final day of the Tech Challenge, obviously they had the presentations. We got to do that at the Enzo Ferrari Museum in Modena. Unfortunately, during that time, COVID was slowly happening in around the world. That affected the 2021 championship. That was a little bit lackluster. That was an online championship, so it was through webcam and all that. Still qualified, did it. Kind of a weird thing, trying to solve a problem through Team Viewer. Didn't give me the same sort of vibe. It was kind of harder to do things that way because it was just, I was not quite with it. And then in 2022, we got to go to Italy again. Things had changed a little bit. They changed the style. Didn't quite suit me, but hey, it was definitely a memorable experience and definitely one of my favorite moments of my career with Ferrari. Once a year, I would go to Italy. Whether it be, sometimes you'd be lucky to get a 2-week course or a 1-week course. You know, you would go to Maranello. They have their own separate academy. It would be about 5 minutes down the road from the factory. And yeah, it's like going to school again, essentially. You'd go in class and, you know, learn everything you would need to learn about Ferrari. It could be broken down from either a introduction to a new model or break down into, you would have generally engine, body, and gearbox and electrics. Bonus part of that, generally what would happen, and all the people like myself involved, the students involved, would always egg on our trainers for a factory tour. Thought I had to earn that. My first time going to Italy, from memory, was 2013. I'm a man that suffers with asthma. It was a 2-week course. I was struggling with breathing. I can remember it being like 3 days in. Our representative obviously could see I was struggling to breathe, to the point that, you know, it was affecting me physically. You could see that, you know, I'm struggling. My representative said, look, John, are you okay? Do we, you know, if we need to, we can fly you back home. I remember going, no, absolutely not. I'm here to learn. This is my once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm not missing the factory tour. The day came, cool experience. I think the factory tour was like kind of a further enhanced my passion, my pride for working for Ferrari. You obviously get to see the cars being built. Got taken through the V8 and V12 factory lines at the time, so that's downstairs, upstairs. You basically get to see molten hot aluminium being poured into sandcast blocks or wherever it was, and then effectively get taken to a fabrication workshop, which would be all CNC'd, cut properly into shape and whatnot, and ported. And besides obviously seeing how the cars are made and all that, which is a cool thing, you try to keep a side eye for, you know, future projects, because I mean, you got to admit it, we're always trying to figure out what the next Ferrari is going to be, you know, so you try to always feast your eyes. And one of my factory tours was actually, this was during the time where the V8 twin turbo on the 488 hadn't actually been announced yet. So 488 and, you know, the V8 twin turbo didn't exist at this time. We were obviously going from one block to another block in the Ferrari facility. There was a garage door open at the time. It was only a small little complex. What happened to be, looked like a motor being transferred from one block to another. The door was obviously open, and I saw my eyes in the corner, and it obviously, I looked at it and I said, that's not the V8, you know, of the current. I can see 2 turbos hanging off the side. And I remember yelling out, because it was obviously, just imagine myself with the other students and my trainer. And I was like, oh, that must be the next V8 twin turbo engine. And even my trainer was like, oh, like, wow, it is. So we all just came rushing in, and yeah, there was this Italian gentleman there at the time having a cigarette, and he obviously was a bit irritated because, you know, we're not supposed to see this. And, you know, he was trying to close the garage door, but the garage door was going at a pace like this, and we're all there looking at it, and he was just like, whatever, it is what it is. And yeah, no, it was cool. Just moments like that was cool to see. I mean, sometimes as well when you get to see, you see the cars covered in like a camouflage sort of thing. You get to see a few 488 mules with, you could tell something was special because you couldn't hear an engine running, and there was obviously like a high voltage symbol clearly stickered on the side of it. And I got to feast my eyes, and sometimes every now and then you keep your eyes out for them driving on the road. During my stint with Barbagallo Ferrari, there was a mild sabbatical in 2017. I had an opportunity to work for a local race team being built up, being formed by a passionate owner. He had gotten his hands on some ex-mechanics from Testarossa F1 team. And I had a 6-month stint with Arise Racing. 2022 was an eventful year for me, obviously one of them being qualifying again for the Testarossa Challenge. After that event, I was lucky enough to experience the Ferrari Mondiali that was being hosted in Imola. So that was about if I remember right, 3 hours drive from Maranello. So thanks to some good friends of mine, the Australian representatives for Ferrari allowed me to tag along and got me tickets for the end of year Ferrari event. It's pretty much a week's worth at the track, seeing Ferraris of all kinds, from the F1 cars, race cars, road cars. It's just Ferrari 100%. Got to experience that in a VIP sense. Well into 2023, we're getting around the halfway point. Work is, it's a hard thing. Being a foreman, your pay's capped, there's only ever so much you can earn. An opportunity arose, and it was with a completely random thing, power generation in the mining scene. It was a tempting offer. I felt if I was going to leave Barbagallo Ferrari, it would be doing something else. I couldn't do it for another brand. I couldn't work on another brand. I'd used Arise Racing, my boss, Jordan Noon, as a reference. I asked, could you be a reference for me in applying for this job? He made mention that they were looking to get me back, which at the time, we've had this conversation numerous times. He's always tried to kind of intrigue me to come back. He just kind of said, look, we were looking to get you back. And my reply was, look, my phone number, whatever. Call me whenever, and we'll have a chat. I didn't take much of it at the time. 3 months into my new job, starting something different. It's not so much a passion thing. It was just more about doing a job, getting paid. It was easy. Got a phone call from my now boss, and basically said to me, look, we're going to do a GT racing team, and we're going to be racing Ferraris. Are you in? I'm like, sorry? And he says, we're going to do a GT racing team, and we've got Ferraris lined up for the 2024 season. I'm like, oh, this is for real? And he goes, yeah, I want you on board. He was like, well, with your current situation, with your job, are you all right, with the quitting side of it? I said, I'm only in probation. It doesn't matter what happens. I can do what I want. He goes, well, when can you quit? I said, give me the signal. Yeah, things kicked off from there. 2024 in a nutshell, best way to start, January 1st, let's just say that's where everything began. It all started with a trestle table and a plant. 3 gentlemen, one of them is myself, my boss, and my other work colleague, Jake. We are you could say the full-time people for the job. We shared roles with obviously trying to get this thing going, because obviously we started with nothing. We had a warehouse that was not ready to be a workshop yet, had the size to be. We obviously basically took turns in preparing, dealing with what needed to be ordered to get the job done. You could just say that 2024 season has given us highs and lows in all forms. We're leading the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. So let's just say for something that started start of the year and to where it is now, and the friendships we made, and if you had seen pictures of where it started to what it is now, it's taken a lot out of my life this year in terms of work hours. I've definitely worked my fair share of hours beyond what I thought I'd be doing. oh, it was worth it. It's to see what we've built as a team is, yeah, I'd do it again. Looking forward, we're basically preparing for an enduro round in Sydney for October. That'll be an interesting one. There'll be a 3-hour race in Sydney Motorsport Park. My chief mechanic has dedicated me as the fuel man, so that'll be my first experience trying that. That'll be fun. And next up, to finish the year off, will be Bathurst, which will then finish off the GT Australian Championship. We're leading in constructors and drivers, and look, I'm hoping we'll take out both titles and finish the year strong. And then after that, we'll be preparing for the Bathurst 12-hour next year. If there was a way to describe my pride or my passion for cars, is Ferrari. It's the culture that Ferrari brings. It's Italian, it has character, it has soul, and that is expressed in their cars. I've gotten the chance, obviously, to drive Ferraris. I've had the chance to drive and work on, thanks to my job, I got to work on Lamborghinis, Maseratis, Rolls-Royce, Aston Martin, Lotus, and still to this day, if I put all those brands together, they don't hit me like a Ferrari does. I guess one good way to express what Ferrari means to me as a brand, we can go back to one of my first notable test drives. I was obviously still an apprentice at the time. I had driven the 430, and that was a great experience, but it wasn't until I had a chance. I wasn't allowed initially to drive the V12s because, you know, they were on a pedestal at the time. But the day came eventually, and I had a chance to drive the 599 GTB. I did get a warning about it. I had done a bit of racing myself and all that, so whatever. Done my road test, go to my little usual strip I go to that, you know, this is where I'm going to open it up. And this thing likes to rev. I remember watching the tacho, just, you know, starting from 1, and I was a bit of a traditionalist. I was a stubborn traditionalist. I always liked to drive the cars without any driver aids. So let's just say this thing lit up in first gear and bouncing off 9,000 RPM. And you can only imagine what a V12 sounds like at such a rate. You know, rev limiter, bouncing, change gear in a second, still wheel spinning, slowly peels out, and the noise it makes is an addiction. That was something that will always stick with me as a memory, because I remember my initial reaction was just on the wheel, because obviously it caught me off guard. This thing went quick, and it was a bit quick for me at the time. So yeah, it was definitely a whoa sort of experience. As the years went by, you know, Ferrari were pushing, you know, the cars were getting more and more powerful. You know, the A12 comp is good, but the F12 TDF was a very visceral model, like the way it would punch you in the back when you change gears. That was something else. It made a good roar, and it was just aggressive. Some people would say it's just too aggressive, but for me, that was just how a car had to be. A car, to me, had to grab my heart. A Ferrari does that best. It's just got soul and character, and that's what I love about Ferrari. They do things their way. That's what makes them stand out from the rest. They've got history. Enzo Ferrari was about racing. He would, you know, build cars and enter whatever races you could get to. If it was Formula One, Mille Miglia, GT racing, he did it. And, you know, the road car side of thing was just a representation. It was obviously a way to make money so he could keep on racing, but Ferrari made sure that what they learnt from racing and what they felt a sports car should be was expressed well in the road cars. I probably get more appreciation out of this when I go to Italy. I think this is where this is another turning point of knowing, like, being proud of what I get to do. In one of my times in Italy, I was in a local restaurant, and, you know, had made mention that I was a mechanic for Ferrari in Australia. The reaction from the Italians at the restaurant was, you know, it made me feel special, because, you know, I didn't go to university or anything like that, so I didn't really think what I did was anything crazy. I went to TAFE to learn about cars. They treated me like I was God. They were like, you work on the best cars in the world. And let's just say they made my dining experience that little bit extra special, just because, yeah, I work on Ferraris. Yeah, it's moments like that that just make me proud, and, you know, knowing that I got to work on the coolest cars in the world. You know, there are hypercars such as, you know, Pagani's, Koenigsegg's and whatnot. They still don't have the impact that a Ferrari does. Would I work on any other brand of car? No. It was why I left initially with Barbagallo Ferrari. It was even easy for me to take up a job that wasn't cars, because if I was to stay in the car game, I couldn't do it with any other brand. And it was the only reason why I joined the Arise Racing GT team. If they had told me they were running a Mercedes GT3 car, I would have easily said no. Just because it's Ferrari, that's why I want to be in it. I want to be part of it. I left Ferrari thinking I left that chapter on a high, and it's just time to move on to my next part of life. Let's just say the universe decided that I wasn't quite done with the brand yet. So when I got offered the job, I knew deep down Ferrari is who I'm meant to be with. So seems like I'm stuck with them for a few more years, and I wouldn't have it any other way.